welcome to R.K Medicos. In this section we are going to discuss about the neuroanatomy and it's about the spinal cord, and in first part of spinal cord we discuss about the anatomy and the segments of the spinal cord. In this section we are going to see about the cut sections of the spinal cord. Now we are going to cut the spinal cord from the any region and we are going to see what is the appearance, what is the different parts we can see we can see inside the spinal cord basically after the cutting. So we can see here in this picture, basically this is the cut section of a spinal cord. I'm going to enlarge it. This is the supposed head cord section, and in this cut section you can see what the structure which is appear like the gray color here, that is marked with red. This all gray color structure is basically simple. They are called as gray matter. It is called as the gray matter. This is all region is the gray matter basically, and gray matter in the central nervous system, in the brain and spinal cord, it is called as the collection of cell body. It means the collection of cell body in the central nervous system, either in the brain or in the spinal cord, that is the gray matter. And outside this region, what we are looking here, that is in the white in appearance between the gray matter and the green color and the red color. That one is, we can see there is a white space, a huge white space we can see. This huge white space is called as basically white matter. So now I am going to marking here, the W is for the white matter, white matter, white matter, white matter. This all is white matter. What is gray matter? You can see here, this is the all gray matter, gray matter, gray matter. And gray matter is basically collection of cell body in the central nervous system. The collection of cell body in the central nervous system is basically also called as in the several senses nuclei, when they are surrounded with white matter. The collection of cell body is surrounded with white matter in the central nervous system is called as nuclei basically, and there are different types of nuclei is present in the gray matter of the spinal cord. This gray matter is going to form several nuclei in our spinal cord. And now we are going to see what are the nuclei we can see inside the gray matter of the spinal cord, and what are their names of the nuclei, what is the main functions of these nuclei, and where they located in the which portion. So in this section what is present is the gray matter. This surface is called as anterior portion of a spinal cord, and this one is basically posterior portion of a spinal cord. So posterior, and here is the anterior and posterior portion of a spinal cord. It means this one we can see the lateral portion is here. This one is the lateral portion of the spinal cord, and this one is also the lateral portion of the spinal cord. So the lateral portion is here for the spinal cord, we can see in the gray matter. This one is posterior portion, this one is the anterior portion. Here same, this one is the anterior portion, this one is the posterior portion, and this one is the lateral portion of the gray matter. Now we are going to see in which portion what are the nuclei is located, either in the anterior portion of the gray matter, lateral portion of the gray matter, and the posterior portion of the gray matter. So you can see here in the cord section, part 2 of the spinal cord, we are going to see this is the gray matter. Now this is the gray matter basically. This whole region is going to mark as a gray matter. So you can imagine I am going to take only one side, and this is the one half of the spinal cord. This is the one half of our spinal cord. Hope it will be clear for you. It is the one structure that can be determined here. We can see in this picture the one half of the spinal cord of the gray matter is taken. What is happen in this? You can see here. So anterior, lateral, and posterior portion. Anterior portion is basically having three nuclei. You can see. I'm going to mark. The first one is lateral, intermediate, and the medial. These are the three nuclei which is located in the anterior portion of the spinal cord. So in the anterior portion of the spinal cord, how many nuclei? Three. The lateral, intermediate, and the medial. So now you can tell me, this is the anterior portion This is the posterior portion of the spinal cord. It means we can see in this picture also. Posterior portion, anterior portion. This is the anterior portion of gray matter, lateral portion and posterior portion. Anterior portion having 3 nuclei. We can see this is the medial part and this is the lateral part here. The medial part is basically in the middle of the spinal cord, middle section, and we can see there it is the one nuclei is located medially. That's why the name of this nuclei is medial nuclei of the anterior horn. Next one is lateral. They are situated laterally. That's why they are called as the lateral nuclei of the anterior horn. And in between them, in between both of the lateral and medial, that is called as intermediate nuclei of the anterior horn. So these are the 3 nuclei which is present in the anterior horn of the gray matter of a spinal cord, and these 3 nuclei is having a specific function in our body. They are going to regulate some special function. So now we are going to move in the function of these 3 nuclei. We can see this anterior horn, all the anterior horn nuclei, what we see till now, the lateral nuclei, the intermediate nuclei and the medial nuclei. So these all 3 nuclei is having a special function, and they are basically motor. And you also know in the spinal cord section, suppose that this is the spinal cord and this section is representing here gray matter. From this region, the motor part, these nerves are going out, and from here the nerves are in. It means they are the sensory fiber. This is the motor. So these all nuclei are the regulating the function is basically motor function, because they are in the anterior part or the ventral part of the spinal cord. And what the gray matter is going to perform their function in the anterior part of the or the ventral part of the spinal cord is basically motor function. They are supplying the effector part or the effector glands to the different region of our body. They are supplying. So they are the motor function of the spinal cord in this section. So medial nuclei is performing their function is innervating the axial truncal muscles. We can say the medial nuclei is situated more near to the middle part of the spinal cord, and they are supplying to the all the truncal muscles. What the muscles of the trunk region? It means the appendicular part or middle part of the body, that is the chest region, abdominal region or pelvic cavity. These all are the region included in the trunk. These are the biggest portion. So these all the muscles, what the muscles are located in this region is supplied by the medial nuclei of the gray matter of the spinal cord. Next we can see the lateral one is supplying to the limbs. Either they are the upper limb or lower limbs. All the muscles of the upper limb and lower limb are supplying through what? They are supplying through the lateral nuclei of the spinal cord. Next we are going to see the intermediate nuclei. In between them, they are in the gray matter. They are going to supply the diaphragm, biophrenic nerve. They are mixing together, and the spinal part of the accessory branches of spinal, that is 11th cranial nerve, that name is accessory. Their spinal part is also going to combine with them, and they supply to the diaphragm. Now it's very clear. In the anterior portion, 3 nuclei, they are having different function. They are supplying the different parts of the body. So now we are moving to the second part. In the middle section, we can see here there is the lateral nuclei and the medial nuclei in the lateral part of the spinal cord. We can see in this picture also. Now you tell me, where is the lateral part? Lateral part is here. And what are the 2 nuclei in the lateral portion? One is medial and one is lateral. Medial to it is medial. This one is medial nuclei, because this line is separating them, and this is the lateral. So these are the 2 nuclei which is situated. One is medial, one is lateral. These 2 nuclei is having also a special function. What are the medial nuclei and the lateral nuclei functions of the spinal cord in the lateral part of the gray matter? We are going to see now. So you can see there is an intermediate horn. This intermediate horn of the gray matter of the spinal cord is having supplying the autonomic nervous system. And autonomic nervous system, you know, it is having 2 parts. Autonomic nervous system, there is a sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So these are the two branches of the autonomic nervous system. So now you can imagine the medial or lateral is both going for the either autonomic nervous system, it means sympathetic or parasympathetic. It's so simple. So the medial nuclei is going to the parasympathetic outflow, and the lateral nuclei of the gray matter of the intermediate horn, they are going to supply for the sympathetic outflow. And even you can imagine here the parasympathetic outflow. Suppose that this is our cranium and this is our spinal cord. You can imagine this is cranium and this is a spinal cord. You can see all the parasympathetic outflow is basically from the cranium and sacral region. Suppose that this spinal cord divided into cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and the sacral and coccygeal. So the outflow, what the nerve is exiting out from the cranium, all the nerve from the cranium and the sacrum, these all fibers are called as parasympathetic nervous system outflow. So in the parasympathetic system outflow, the fibers are coming from the cranium and sacrum region. But in the sympathetic outflow, the fibers are coming from, we can see thoracic, from T1, from all the T1 to the L2, up to the L2 level. So these fibers are coming from thoracolumbar region. We can say like this, thoracolumbar region. So these fibers are coming from there. So this is parasympathetic nervous system, the cranium and sacral, and the thoracolumbar region is connecting fibers from the thoracic and plus lumbar till L2. So these are the fibers are coming like this from here. Wait, we can say. So now you know the medial nuclei of the lateral horn of the spinal cord is going to supply for the parasympathetic nervous system or through the parasympathetic outflow, but the lateral one is going to supply for the sympathetic outflow, and that is also called as thoracolumbar and here called as craniosacral. And in the sympathetic nervous system, some cranial nerves or the cranial fibers are also participated. What are the cranial nerves? They are 12 in number. Out of the 12, the 3, 7, 9 and 10. These 4 cranial nerves are the parasympathetic in their function. According to them, that's why these all cranial nerves are exiting out to the cranial cavity. Through this cranial cavity, they're coming out, and that part of these nerves are called as the craniofibers of the parasympathetic outflow. Now we are going to see in the cranial section of the another one, that is the posterior part. Posterior part of the gray matter of the spinal cord is containing 4 nuclei basically. What are their name? We can see here. The first one is substantia gelatinosa. Next one is Nucleus Proprioces. Next one is visceral afferent, and then Nucleus dorsalis or the Clark's nuclei. Nucleus dorsalis or the Clark's nuclei are the same name. Now we are going to see what are these 4 nuclei, where they are located. We can see here where these nuclei are located. You can see in this picture. These nuclei are located in this region basically. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 nuclei are present in the posterior part of the gray matter, and the first one, substantia gelatinosa, like this. These all are the 4 located in this manner. So now you can see what are the main function of these nuclei, where they are going to perform their function. So first we can see in the posterior horn, already told you the sensory fibers are entered from here. Posterior horn, sensory fibers are coming, and sensory fibers, it means they carry sensory impulses of our body, and these sensory impulses are enters inside this. That's why these all the nuclei are controlling the sensory activity. It's so simple. These all are controlling sensory activity. It means that's why they are called as the sensory nuclei. It's so simple. These are the sensory nuclei. Yeah, it's true. Next point. Then first name of the nuclei is substantia gelatinosa. It's located in a sequence, substantia gelatinosa. Their function is performing, they controlling the spinothalamic tract. It's so simple. Spinothalamic, it means suppose that here is the cranium, here is the spinal cord, it means here is the suppose that thalamus. So these fibers, they control the sensory fibers are moving up from the spinal cord and they're going to the thalamus and then cortex. So the spinothalamic region, this pathway is called as spinothalamic. That's why from the spinal cord they're going to the thalamus. That's why spinothalamic tract is controlled by the which nuclei? Substantia gelatinosa. It's so simple. This spinothalamic tract is what they are going to control. They are controlling the pain sensation, temperature, crude touch and the pressures of the body. These all four different types of stimuli is carried out by the spinothalamic tract, and it is regulated by a nuclei of the spinal cord of the gray matter in the posterior horn. That nuclei name is substantia gelatinosa. Next one we can see the pain, temperature, crude touch and pressure for the face can be regulated by the trigeminal nerve. These all the pain, temperature and the crude touch for all over the body can be regulated by the substantia gelatinosa. But for the face, there is a special type of nuclei is working here, that is trigeminal nerve, that is cranial nerve number 5. This cranial nerve number 5 is basically for the pain, temperature and the crude touch in the facial region in our face. This nerve is supplying. So in the facial region is different, but all over body is different. So next, substantia gelatinosa is continues as a spinal nerves of the trigeminal branch, that is a spinal nerve. They are continuing as in the latter stages, that is substantia gelatinosa. Now we are going to say the next nuclei, Nucleus Proprioces, that is the second nuclei of the posterior horn, that is receive the dorsal column of the posterior part of the spinal cord. In the posterior part of the gray matter of the spinal cord, there is another nuclei, substantia gelatinosa. They are controlling the dorsal column lemniscus pathway, and this dorsal column lemniscus tract is basically controlling the different activities of our pathway. We are going to see in the ascending and descending tract, these tracks are coming there, but for now you have to know which tract is controlled by the which nuclei. So here you know now the nucleus propriosus is controlling the dorsal column pathway. Now we can see the Clark's nuclei or the nucleus dorsalis. They are the same term. They are also controlling the spinocerebellar tract. What the pathway going from the spinal cord to the cerebellum. That is the spinal cord to cerebellum. These tracts are controlled by the which nuclei? That is the Clark's nuclei or nucleus dorsalis. Now we can see the visceral afferent. These are the receiving the information. They are receiving the afferent information from the visceral organs. Basically the visceral organs, there is no sensory innervation, but their capsules are innervated with the nerves, and these nerves are coming to the which part of a spinal cord? Posterior horn. And which nuclei? To the visceral afferent nuclei. These are located in the posterior horn. So these are the cut section of the spinal cord is located like this, and there are different functions of the all the nuclei of the spinal cord we can see here. And you can now see in this picture how we are going to find all this identification. You can see in the anterior horn there is 3 nuclei: medial, central or intermediate or the lateral. These all are the group of nuclei located in the anterior gray column of the spinal cord. Now we are going to see in the middle one there is a intermediomedial nuclei or the intermediolateral nuclei. Basically they are located in the intermediate part. That why they are also called as intermediolateral nuclei or intermedial nuclei. Basically there are 2 types of nuclei in the intermediate horn or the lateral horn, that is the medial or lateral. That's why they are called intermedio, because they are present in the anterior and posterior horn. Between them, that's why intermedial, intermediolateral nuclei. They are the 2, and their functions you know now. Now we are moving to the posterior horn. This is the posterior horn. In this posterior marginal nuclei, substantia gelatinosa, nucleus propriosus and Clark's nuclei, the basal afferent. These all are the nuclei which are located. You can see in this picture. These all are the nuclei in one section. So these are the gray matter, their nuclei, and there are different types of function you know now. And you have to memorize it. You have to learn it by heart, because this nuclei is very important in the tract system. In next part we are going to discuss about the ascending and descending tract. So you have to learn about it. So thank you. See you in next video. Bye bye.